The Frontier Station loomed in the viewport like a forgotten monument. A massive, rusted superstructure of interconnected modules and docking rings that had once served as humanity's proud gateway to the stars. Now it floated, half dormant, at the very edge of what galactic maps simply labeled as human space. Mira Kessler watched the approaching station with analytical eyes, mentally cataloging the signs of neglect: defunct solar arrays, communication dishes tilted at awkward angles, and exterior panels showing the distinctive pitting of micrometeor damage. The transport shuttle she occupied hummed softly as it made its final approach. "First posting, Ambassador?" asked the shuttle pilot, a grizzled human woman with streaks of silver in her cropped hair. "First field posting," Mira corrected, straightening her formal diplomatic uniform. The Galactic Alliance insignia gleamed on her chest, 3 interlocking rings representing the major species confederations. "I've spent 5 years at Central Administration," the pilot snorted. "Central and Frontier are different universes. Ambassador, out here, protocols are flexible." Mira chose not to respond. Her assignment briefing had been explicit. Frontier Station needed diplomatic oversight after reports of increasing tension between human settlers and the various alien species who used the facility as a trade hub. Half a century after humanity had expanded beyond their solar system, their reputation in the galaxy remained complicated. The shuttle docked with a metallic clang that reverberated through the cabin. Mira gathered her minimal belongings. She had been advised to pack light and prepared to disembark. "Welcome to the Edge," the pilot called after her, the shuttle doors hissing open. "Don't believe everything they tell you about this place." Mira stepped onto the station and was immediately struck by the cacophony of sounds and smells. Unlike the sterile, regulated environments of Central, Frontier Station was alive with chaotic energy. Beings of various species hurried through corridors that were never designed to accommodate such diversity. Towering Mikbari, with their translucent skin. Squat Vorian traders with their characteristic four-armed gesticulations. And dozens of other species Mira recognized only from diplomatic briefings. A human officer in a worn Galactic Alliance uniform approached. "Ambassador Kessler, Lieutenant Commander Jax Var, Head of Security." He offered a perfunctory salute, rather than the formal greeting protocol dictated. "We weren't expecting you for another cycle." "I requested expedited transport," Mira replied, taking in the man's appearance. Jax Var was tall and broad-shouldered, with the hardened physique of someone who had spent considerable time in varying gravity environments. A thin scar ran from his left temple down to his jaw, disappearing into the shadow of stubble. His uniform, while technically regulation, showed signs of multiple field repairs. "Any particular reason?" he asked, already taking her single bag and leading her through the crowded main concourse. The reports reaching Central suggested the situation here warranted immediate attention, Mira said carefully. "Particularly the incidents involving the missing resource carriers." Jax's stride faltered almost imperceptibly. "You don't waste time, do you, Ambassador?" "That's not why I was sent here, Commander." They navigated through corridors where the original stark white panels had been overlaid with generations of graffiti, repair patches, and improvised signage in a dozen languages. The air recyclers hummed inefficiently, creating pockets of varying temperatures as they walked. "Your quarters are in the administrative section," Jax explained. "It's the only area we've managed to keep somewhat aligned with Central standards." As they turned a corner, Mira noticed a large digital display showing a star map. The familiar territory of Galactic Alliance space glowed in reassuring blue, while an ominous red zone stretched beyond the position of Frontier Station. Someone had spray-painted words across the red section in multiple languages, but the largest, in Standard, read simply, "End of the Galaxy." Mira pointed to it. "Dramatic." Jax smiled thinly. The non-humans started calling it that. Most species are superstitious about this region of space. Strange radiation patterns, unreliable navigation. The nickname stuck. And yet humans keep pushing into it. That's what we do, Ambassador. We go where others won't. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden commotion down a side corridor. A group of Vorian traders were engaged in a heated exchange with a human wearing an independent mining company insignia. Jax immediately diverted toward them, motioning for Mira to stay back. But her diplomatic instincts took over and she followed. "Won't accept half payment for full cargo," one of the Vorians was saying, all four arms gesticulating wildly. "Agreement was clear." "The agreement was made before 3 of your shipments arrived contaminated," the miner retorted. "We lost 2 processing units cleaning that mess." Mira observed the escalating tension, noting how Jax positioned himself, not between the parties, but slightly to the side, one hand casually near his sidearm. This wasn't Central's approach to mediation. "Perhaps I can help." Mira stepped forward, her translator badge automatically adjusting to the Vorian dialect. "I'm Ambassador Kessler." Both parties turned to her with surprise. The human miner frowned. "Central finally decided to send someone?" "I'm here to facilitate communication and resolve issues precisely like this one," Mira said smoothly. "Would you both be willing to explain the terms of your original agreement?" 20 minutes later, Mira had negotiated a compromise. Partial payment now with the remainder held in escrow, pending a quality inspection by a neutral third party. The Vorians departed with grudging acceptance, and the miners seemed relieved to have found a solution that didn't involve further confrontation. "Impressive," Jax commented, as they continued toward the administrative section. "But you'll find most disputes out here aren't solved so easily." "I'm aware," Mira replied. "Which is why I'd like a full briefing on the missing resource carrier as soon as possible." Jax sighed. "We've prepared a briefing room. The ship was the Helios Venture, carrying processed thorium and specialized equipment for the outer mining colonies. Disappeared 8 standard days ago. Last automated beacon placed it near the Rada Expanse. The Rada Expanse is well within the red zone," Mira noted, recalling the map. "Like I said," Jax's wry smile returned. "The end of the galaxy." The briefing room matched the rest of the station's aesthetic. Functional, but showing its age. Holographic displays flickered occasionally, and the central table was scarred with the marks of countless past meetings. Waiting for them was a striking woman with jet-black hair, pulled into a severe bun. She wore the insignia of the Engineering Corps, though her uniform jacket had been modified with numerous unauthorized pockets and tool attachments. "Ambassador Kessler, this is Chief Engineer Zora Lynn," Jax introduced. "She's been analyzing the last transmission from the Helios Venture." Zora nodded curtly. "About time Central sent someone." Her accent carried the distinctive inflections of the outer colonies. "I've isolated the distress signal, but there's something unusual about it." She activated the central display, and a garbled audio transmission filled the room. Through the static, a panicked voice could barely be discerned. "Under attack! Unknown vessels! Request immediate!" The transmission dissolved into unintelligible noise before one final clear phrase emerged. "They came from the end." "That's all we have?" Mira asked. "There was a data packet attached," Zora explained, bringing up a series of coordinates and technical readings. "Partial ship diagnostics, location ping, and this." She highlighted a section of scrambled code. "It's encrypted using an outdated Galactic Alliance military protocol, one that hasn't been standard for at least 15 years. Mira studied the information, her diplomatic training allowing her to quickly process the implications. So either the Helios Venture was using severely outdated systems, or someone wanted to send information that only certain people would understand, Jax finished. "Either way, we need to investigate." "The Alliance Council has authorized a reconnaissance mission," Mira informed them. "I'm to lead it." Both Jax and Zora stared at her in surprise. "With all due respect, Ambassador," Jax began, "that's not how things work out here. We have qualified security teams who—" "The Council was specific," Mira cut him off. "This mission requires diplomatic oversight. We don't know if we're dealing with pirates, local disputes, or something that could have broader implications for alliance relations." "The Rada Expanse is no place for a diplomat," Zora said bluntly. "It's a gravitational nightmare with plasma storms that can fry your navigation systems in seconds. Even the locals avoid it when possible." "Which is why you'll both be accompanying me," Mira replied calmly. "Commander Var for security, Engineer Lin for technical expertise, along with a small crew selected for their knowledge of the region." Jax and Zora exchanged glances, a silent communication that Mira couldn't quite decipher. "When do we leave?" Jax finally asked. "Tomorrow. The survey vessel Artemis has been prepared for our use," Mira said. "I'd like to review all available data on the Rada Expanse and recent activity in the Red Zone before we depart." "I'll have the files transferred to your quarters," Zora offered, her initial hostility softening slightly. "And I should check the Artemis's systems personally. Survey vessels aren't designed for the kind of conditions we might encounter." As Zora left to begin preparations, Jax lingered, studying Mira with newfound interest. "You're not what I expected from Central," he admitted. "What did you expect?" "Someone who'd spend weeks reviewing procedures while the Helios Ventures trail went cold." Mira allowed herself a small smile. "Sometimes, Central surprises even me, Commander." Later, in her assigned quarters, austere but clean, a luxury on Frontier Station, Mira reviewed the files Zora had sent. The Rada Expanse was indeed a treacherous region, a dense cluster of asteroids, failed stars, and unpredictable radiation sources. Navigation charts were incomplete, and what data existed was often contradictory. More concerning were the reports of what locals called the Frontier Guardians, loosely organized bands that operated in the lawless regions beyond Alliance jurisdiction. Some characterized them as pirates, others as vigilantes enforcing their own version of frontier justice. Several missing ships over the past standard year had been attributed to their activities, though evidence remained circumstantial. A soft chime announced a visitor at her door. When it slid open, Mira found herself facing a tall, willowy alien with the characteristic translucent skin of a Mikbari. The being's internal organs were faintly visible, pulsing with bioluminescent light in patterns that Mira knew corresponded to emotional states. "Ambassador Kessler," the Mikbari spoke, its voice melodious and without need of translation. Mikbari were famous for their gift of languages. "I am Tiral, your assigned pilot for the upcoming mission." "Please, come in," Mira offered, noting the calm, steady pulse of light within Tiral's thoracic cavity, a sign of controlled emotions. Tiral ducked slightly to enter the room, folding its elongated limbs gracefully as it settled into a sitting position across from Mira. "I understand you have experience in the Rada Expanse?" Mira inquired. "3 expeditions," Tiral confirmed. "It is a place of great spiritual significance to many species, including my own. The Mikbari believe it is where stars go to die and be reborn." Mira filed away this cultural information, potentially useful for understanding regional perceptions. "And what do you believe?" Tiral's internal lights shifted to a deeper blue. "I believe it is a place where the normal rules of space do not apply. Ambassador, the plasma storms create inconsistencies. Time and distance become fluid concepts." "That sounds more like superstition than science," Mira observed carefully. "The divide between the two is not always clear at the end of the galaxy," Tiral replied. "I have seen things there that defy conventional explanation, but I have also navigated its challenges successfully." "Which is why you've been assigned to our mission." Tiral inclined its head in agreement. "I should warn you, however, The beings who call themselves frontier guardians are not to be underestimated. They know the expanse intimately and use its anomalies to their advantage. Have you encountered them personally? Once, Thrall admitted. Internal lights pulsing briefly to anxious yellow before returning to blue. They boarded a research vessel I was piloting, took our quantum processing cores and left us adrift. We were fortunate they did not take our lives as well. Did you see their leader? No. They operated with discipline, suggesting military training. They spoke little, but what they did say was ideological. Something about resources belonging to those who risk the expanse, not to distant corporations. Mira considered this information. Thank you for sharing this, Thrall. It will help us prepare. There is one more thing, Ambassador. Thrall's lights shifted to a solemn purple. The Helios venture. It was not the first ship to disappear in that exact region. There is a pattern that Central may not be aware of. What kind of pattern? Ships carrying specific materials, thorium, quantum processors, gravitational stabilizers, components that could be used to build something significant. Mira felt a chill of realization. Not random piracy, but targeted acquisition. Precisely. Thrall rose to leave. We depart at 600 station time. I suggest you rest well. Ambassador. The expanse shows no mercy to the unprepared. After Thrall departed, Mira sent an encrypted message to her contact at Central, detailing the new information and requesting any intelligence on construction projects that might require the stolen materials. She received no immediate response. Communications from Frontier Station were notoriously unreliable. But she knew the message would eventually reach its destination. As she prepared for sleep, Mira found herself drawn to the viewport in her quarters. Beyond the station's structural elements, she could see the vast emptiness of what the locals called the end of the galaxy. Unlike the star-studded vistas visible from Central, this view was eerily sparse, punctuated only by distant, ghostly nebulae that glowed with unsettling colors. For the first time since accepting her assignment, Mira felt a flutter of apprehension. Central's briefings and protocols seemed woefully inadequate for what awaited in that ominous void. The Artemis proved to be smaller than Mira had anticipated, a compact survey vessel designed for scientific missions rather than potential confrontations. Its sleek hull bore the scars of previous expeditions, hastily repaired and reinforced. The ship's complement was equally modest. Mira, Jax, Zora, Thrall, and 3 additional crew members selected for their specialized skills. We've modified the sensor array to better detect the plasma fluctuations, Zora explained as she guided Mira through the pre-launch checks. And reinforced the shielding around critical systems. It's not perfect, but it's the best we could do with available resources. Will it be enough? Mira asked directly. Zora's hesitation was brief but noticeable. It'll have to be. The launch procedure went smoothly. Thrall's expertise evident in the fluid way the Artemis detached from Frontier Station and gracefully arced toward the Rada expanse. From the bridge viewport, Mira watched as the station receded into the distance, eventually becoming just another point of light against the darkness. Course set for the Helios Venture's last known coordinates, Thrall announced, multi-jointed fingers dancing across the navigation controls. We should reach the outer boundary of the expanse in approximately 6 hours. Jax, who had been reviewing security protocols with his team, joined Mira at the viewport. We've loaded the weapon systems with non-lethal options first, but there are conventional armaments if needed. Let's hope they remain unnecessary, Mira replied, though she understood the precaution. As the Artemis proceeded toward its destination, Mira took the opportunity to become better acquainted with the remaining crew members. Besides Thrall, Jax, and Zora, there was Dr. Alara Voss, a xenobiologist who had spent 3 years studying the unusual life forms that thrived in the radiation-rich environment of the expanse. Carol Tomo, a communications specialist with experience decoding distress signals, and Vin Nazari, a former pilot for mining operations who knew the asteroid fields better than anyone, except perhaps the Frontier Guardians themselves. "The Guardians aren't all bad," Vin offered during a shared meal in the ship's compact galley. His weathered face bore the distinctive pallor of someone who had spent too much time exposed to the expanse's radiation. Some of them started as legitimate security for the independent mining operations. When the corporations pulled out during the economic restructuring, they were left without support or extraction plans. "So they turned to piracy," Jack said flatly. "They turned to survival," Vin corrected. "And then to ideology. They believe the resources out here should benefit those who risk everything to obtain them, not distant shareholders. That doesn't justify attacking Alliance vessels," Mira pointed out. "No," Vin agreed. "But understanding their motivation might help us if we encounter them." The conversation was interrupted by a sudden lurch as the Artemis shuddered violently. Warning signals blared throughout the ship, and the lighting switched to emergency red. "Plasma storm!" Trall's voice came over the comm system. "Everyone secure yourselves." Mira grabbed a handrail as the ship bucked again, more violently this time. The others similarly braced themselves, Zora already moving toward an access panel to check critical systems. "This is unexpected," Dr. Voss said, her clinical tone at odds with the chaos around them. The forecasts showed no storm activity in this sector for at least another cycle. "Forecasts for the expanse are educated guesses at best," Vin replied grimly. Mira made her way to the bridge, fighting against the ship's erratic movements. When she arrived, she found Taral engaged in what appeared to be a physical struggle with the ship's controls, the Mikbari's internal lights flashing with stress patterns. "We've encountered a Class 4 plasma disruption," Taral explained without looking up. "It's interfering with our navigation and propulsion systems." Through the viewport, Mira could see what had once been empty space now, alive with writhing tendrils of energy, brilliant blues, and violets that would have been beautiful if they weren't potentially lethal. "Can we go around it?" she asked. "Negative. It materialized directly in our path. We're already caught in its outer boundary." Taral's movements became increasingly precise. "I'm attempting to establish a stable course through the least dense section." Jax arrived on the bridge, his expression grim. "Engineering reports power fluctuations throughout the ship. Zora's trying to stabilize the core, but she says we need to reduce power consumption immediately." Mira made a quick decision. Shut down all non-essential systems, priority to life support, propulsion, and minimal shielding. As Jax relayed the orders, the lights dimmed further, and several console displays went dark. The ship continued to shake, but less violently now. "It's working," Tral confirmed. "We're making progress through the storm, but—" The Mikbari hesitated. "But what?" Mira prompted. "The storm is pushing us off our intended course. We're being driven deeper into the expanse than planned." Mira studied the navigation display, noting their deviation from the plotted route. "How long until we clear the storm?" "At current velocity, approximately 43 minutes, Tral answered. "But our position afterward will be at least 3 sectors away from our target coordinates." "And our fuel reserves?" Mira asked, already suspecting the answer. "Insufficient for a direct return to our original course," Tral confirmed. "We would need to refuel." "Options?" Jax pulled up a star chart on one of the remaining functional displays. "There's an abandoned mining outpost in Sector K-17. If it hasn't been completely stripped, it might have emergency fuel reserves." "And if it has been stripped?" Mira asked. "Then we send a distress signal and wait for rescue," Jax said flatly. "Which could take weeks out here." The decision weighed heavily on Mira. Their mission was time-sensitive. The longer they delayed, the colder the Helios Ventures trail became. But proceeding without adequate fuel reserves was potentially suicidal. "Set course for the mining outpost once we clear the storm," she finally ordered. "But maintain passive scans for any sign of the Helios Venture or unusual activity." This deviation might actually work in our favor. Give us a different perspective on the search area. The next 40 minutes were tense as Taral navigated the plasma storm with impressive skill. Mira used the time to coordinate with Zora on damage reports and with Karel on enhancing their scanning capabilities, despite the reduced power. When they finally emerged from the storm, the Artemis was noticeably worse for wear. Several external sensor arrays had been fried, and the hull showed new scorching from plasma discharges. But the ship was intact, and the crew unharmed. "Setting course for the mining outpost," Taral announced. The Mikbari's internal lights gradually returning to their normal steady blue as the crisis passed. The outpost, when they reached it 3 hours later, was a grim sight. A collection of modular structures anchored to a small, resource-depleted asteroid. Most of the buildings showed signs of explosive decompression, their interiors exposed to vacuum. Only the central facility appeared relatively intact. "Life signs?" Mira asked, as they established orbit around the asteroid. "None detected," Dr. Voss reported from the sensor station. "But there are power signatures. Minimal, but present. Some systems are still functioning." "Could be automated," Jax suggested. "Or it could be a trap." "We need that fuel," Zora reminded them. "The Artemis can't reach the Helios Ventures coordinates or return to Frontier Station without it." Mira weighed their limited options. "We'll send a team to investigate. Jax, Zora, you're with me. Dr. Voss as well, in case there are biological hazards. Taral, keep the Artemis at ready status for immediate extraction if necessary." The team suited up in the ship's airlock, checking each other's seals and equipment. The standard exploration suits had been modified for expanse conditions, with additional radiation shielding and emergency oxygen reserves. "Comms check," Jax initiated, as they prepared to depart via the ship's shuttle. "Clear," Mira confirmed, followed by acknowledgments from Zora and Dr. Voss. The short flight to the outpost was uneventful, but tension mounted as they approached the main airlock. Years of micrometeorite impacts had pitted the exterior, and the Alliance corporate logo that once proudly announced the facility's ownership was now barely legible. "Doesn't look like anyone's home," Zora commented as they docked the shuttle to the outpost's external port. "Appearances can be deceiving at the end of the galaxy," Dr. Voss replied cryptically. The airlock cycled with surprising efficiency, suggesting that at least some maintenance systems were still operational. As the inner door opened, their helmet lights illuminated a scene of calculated abandonment. Equipment too large or worthless to steal remained, while anything of value had been methodically removed. "Fuel storage would be in the central processing facility," Zora said, consulting a schematic on her wrist display. "This way." They moved cautiously through darkened corridors, the only sound their own breathing and the occasional creak of the structure as it rotated slowly to maintain its weak artificial gravity. "Ambassador," Dr. Voss called suddenly, her light focused on a section of wall. "You should see this." Mira approached and felt her blood chill. Spray-painted across the metal bulkhead was the now familiar phrase, "End of the Galaxy." But beneath it was a symbol she hadn't seen before. A stylized compass rose with a red arrow pointing outward. "Frontier Guardians," Jax confirmed grimly. "This was one of their outposts." "Was?" Mira questioned. "It's been abandoned for some time," Dr. Voss observed, examining dust patterns. "I'd estimate at least 3 standard months." They proceeded with heightened caution, Jax now leading with his sidearm drawn. The central processing facility was a cavernous space dominated by massive refinery equipment, most of it intact but dormant. "The fuel reserves would be in the sealed containers over there." Zora pointed to a series of reinforced tanks at the far end of the facility. "If we're lucky, they left some behind." As they crossed the open space, Mira noticed something that sent alarm bells ringing. "Those machinery components, they're new." Jax followed her gaze to a collection of parts that stood out from the otherwise aged equipment. "Recent installations, But why upgrade a facility you're abandoning? Unless you're not abandoning it, Zora suggested. Just temporarily relocating. A sudden noise from above caused them all to freeze. Jax immediately positioned himself in front of Mira, weapon raised toward the source. "We're not alone," he whispered. Before anyone could react further, lights blazed to life throughout the facility, momentarily blinding them through their helmet visors. When Mira's vision cleared, she found themselves surrounded by armed figures in mismatched but effective combat gear, weapons trained on their group. "Alliance representatives," a voice called from the upper gantry. "You're a long way from Central." A figure stepped into view, human, male, with the hardened physique of someone who had spent a lifetime in frontier conditions. His face was partially obscured by a rebreather mask, but his eyes were sharp and evaluating. "We're on a humanitarian mission," Mira responded, stepping forward despite Jax's protective gesture. "Our ship was damaged in a plasma storm. We need fuel to continue." "Humanitarian," the man repeated with obvious skepticism. "And what exactly does that entail out here, where the Alliance has abandoned its responsibilities?" "We're searching for a missing resource carrier," Mira explained, deciding that partial honesty was their best approach. "The Helios venture. It disappeared 8 days ago." A ripple of communication passed among the armed figures surrounding them, subtle hand signals and glances that suggested the name held meaning. "And Central sent a diplomat for this routine search and rescue?" The leader's tone made it clear he didn't believe the explanation. "I'm Ambassador Mira Kessler," she confirmed. "This mission has diplomatic oversight because of the sensitive nature of the vessel's cargo and the possibility of involvement from non-alliance entities." The leader descended from the gantry, each step deliberate. As he came closer, Mira could see the compass rose emblem on his shoulder armor, identical to the symbol they'd found painted on the wall. "You've found your non-alliance entities." "Ambassador," he said, removing his rebreather to reveal a face marked by old radiation burns. "I'm Commander Valen of the Frontier Guardians. And yes, we know about the Helios venture." Jax tensed beside her, but Mira placed a restraining hand on his arm. "Then perhaps we can help each other, Commander Valen." "And why would we need Alliance help?" Valen asked, though Mira noted he hadn't immediately rejected the possibility. "Because whatever you're building with the materials you've acquired requires expertise," Mira guessed, nodding toward the new components they'd noticed. "Expertise that might be in short supply at the end of the galaxy?" Valen's expression hardened. "You presume much, Ambassador." "I observe," Mira corrected. "Those are gravitational stabilizer components, high-end ones. They're not for this facility. They're in transit, combined with thorium processing and quantum computing cores. You could be building a jump gate or a weapon." For a tense moment, Mira thought she had miscalculated. Valen's hand drifted toward his own sidearm, and the surrounding guardians shifted their positions. "A jump gate," Valen finally confirmed. "Independent of Alliance control. Free access for all who respect Expanse sovereignty." "Ambitious," Mira acknowledged, "and technically illegal under Alliance Charter." "The Alliance Charter doesn't apply here," Valen stated flatly. "That's rather the point." "Perhaps it should," Mira suggested. "With modifications to address Expanse realities. Independent operation but with Alliance technical support and safety standards." Valen laughed, a harsh sound in the tense atmosphere. "You suggest legitimizing us, after years of Central treating the Expanse as a lawless resource pit?" "I suggest a practical solution," Mira replied calmly. "You need technical expertise. The Alliance needs stability in this region. Cooperation serves both interests." Before Valen could respond, an alarm blared throughout the facility. One of the Guardians rushed to a console, examining readings with obvious concern. "Incoming ships," the Guardian reported. "Multiple signatures. Alliance configuration." Valen's expression darkened. "You led them here." Impossible, Jax protested. Our comms have been minimal since the storm. We haven't sent any positioning data. The Helios Venture, Zora suddenly realized. If they're tracking it. It's here, Mira concluded, pieces falling into place. You have the Helios Venture somewhere in this asteroid field. Valen's silence was confirmation enough. He gestured to his people. Prepare for evacuation. Protocol Omega. Wait, Mira urged. If those are Alliance military vessels, this situation could escalate beyond anyone's control. Let me contact them. Establish a dialogue. So they can arrest us and confiscate years of work? Valen scoffed. I think not. Ambassador? Then take us as insurance, Mira suggested, ignoring Jax's alarmed expression. It will prevent them from taking immediate hostile action. Valen studied her for a long moment, calculation evident in his gaze. You're either very brave or very foolish. Ambassador Kessler. I'm pragmatic, Mira replied, and I'd rather not see bloodshed if it can be avoided. After a tense silence, Valen nodded sharply. The ambassador comes with us. The rest of you stay here as a show of good faith. If the Alliance forces act with restraint, you'll be released unharmed. Unacceptable, Jax began, but Mira cut him off. Agreed, she said to Valen. But Engineer Lin comes as well. If your jump gate is as advanced as I suspect, her expertise will be valuable. Valen considered this, then nodded again. The engineer too. The rest stay. Ambassador, Jax began. This is a diplomatic solution, Commander, Mira said firmly. Trust me to do my job. Minutes later, Mira and Zora found themselves aboard a Guardian transport vessel, accelerating away from the mining outpost. Through a viewport, Mira could see the distinctive shapes of Alliance patrol ships entering the asteroid field, standard peacekeeping vessels rather than heavy combat craft, which suggested they were indeed on a search and rescue mission rather than a military operation. You're making a mistake, Zora told Valen as they watched the outpost recede. Central will never negotiate while you're holding Alliance personnel hostage. We're not seeking Central's approval, Valen replied. We're establishing facts on the ground, or in space, as it were. The transport navigated through a dense section of the asteroid field, following a route that seemed random to Mira, but clearly held meaning for the pilot. After several minutes of tense silence, they emerged into a concealed pocket within the field, and Mira gasped involuntarily. There, anchored between two massive asteroids, was the Helios Venture. The resource carrier appeared intact, though numerous external modifications were visible. Surrounding it was an impressive operation, smaller vessels moving between asteroids, construction frameworks extending from the ship's cargo bays, and what appeared to be the beginnings of a massive ring structure. Your jump gate, Mira observed. The first truly independent transit point in this sector, Valen confirmed, a note of pride in his voice. No Alliance tolls, no corporate restrictions, no bureaucratic oversight, and no safety protocols, Zora added critically, examining the construction. That power configuration is dangerously unstable. Our engineers disagree, Valen said stiffly. Your engineers are wrong, Zora insisted. I've worked on 3 jump gate installations. That thorium processing array isn't properly shielded from the gravitational modulators. When you activate the system, it'll create a cascade reaction. Mira watched Valen closely, noting the flicker of uncertainty that crossed his face before he masked it. You're trying to delay us. She's trying to prevent a catastrophe, Mira corrected. One that would destroy not just your jump gate, but everything within several sectors, including any hope of independence for the Expanse. Their transport docked with the Helios Venture, and Mira and Zora were escorted to what had once been the ship's command center. It had been transformed into an operations hub for the Jump Gate project, with dozens of Guardians working at repurposed stations. Secure them here, Valen ordered. I need to coordinate our response to the Alliance vessels. As Valen departed, Mira surveyed the room, noting the technical displays and the clear enthusiasm of the workers. "These people believe in what they're doing," she murmured to Zora. "Belief won't prevent an explosion when they activate that gate," Zora replied quietly. "The configuration they're using is experimental at best, suicidal at worst." A young guardian approached them hesitantly. "Is it true?" she asked Zora. "About the shielding?" Zora studied the woman for a moment, then nodded. "The thorium processing creates specific radiation patterns that will interfere with the gravitational field stability. Your current configuration can't handle the resonance." "I told them," the woman said, frustration evident in her voice. "But Commander Valen said we couldn't delay the timeline." "What timeline?" Mira asked. "The Alliance has been increasing patrols in this sector. We have intelligence suggesting they plan to establish a permanent monitoring station within 3 months. The jump gate needs to be operational before then. Create a fait accompli." "At the cost of your lives," Mira pressed. The woman looked troubled. "Commander Valen has led us through difficult times. He wouldn't knowingly risk us." "Perhaps not knowingly," Zora acknowledged. "But I'm guessing your engineering team is made up of practical experts, not theoretical physicists. This particular interaction isn't something you'd encounter in standard operations." The conversation was interrupted as alarms blared throughout the ship. Red emergency lighting activated, and the operations personnel scrambled to their stations. "Alliance vessels have locked weapons on the outpost," someone shouted. "Evacuate our people," came Valen's voice over the comm system. "Prepare defensive measures." Chaos erupted as Guardians rushed to comply with the orders. In the confusion, the young woman who had been speaking with them made a decision. "Come with me," she urged Mira and Zora. "If what you're saying about the gate is true, I need to show you something." They followed her through a series of corridors, eventually reaching what appeared to be an engineering substation. The woman quickly accessed a terminal, bringing up technical schematics of the jump gate. "This is the current configuration," she explained, highlighting sections. "If what you're saying about the thorium resonance is accurate, where exactly would the interference occur?" Zora studied the schematics intently, then pointed to a junction between 2 major systems. "Here, the gravitational field will collapse at this point once the thorium reaches full processing capacity." The woman looked grave. "That's where we've been experiencing unexplained energy fluctuations during testing. We attributed it to equipment calibration issues." "It's more fundamental than that," Zora explained. "The design itself is flawed." "Can it be fixed?" Mira asked. "Yes," Zora replied, after a moment's consideration. "But it would require reconfiguring the entire thorium processing system and redesigning the gravitational stabilizers. Weeks of work, minimum." "Which we don't have," the woman said grimly. "Not with Alliance forces closing in." The ship shuddered suddenly, and the lights flickered. "What was that?" Mira demanded. "Weapons fire," the woman confirmed, checking a status display. "They're attacking the construction platforms." "We need to speak to Valen," Mira insisted. "This situation is escalating dangerously." The woman hesitated, then nodded. "Follow me. But be prepared. He won't be receptive in the middle of an attack." They made their way back toward the operations center, fighting against the tide of personnel rushing to battle stations. Twice, they were forced to take cover as the ship rocked from nearby explosions. When they finally reached the operations center, they found it in controlled chaos. Valen stood at the central console, issuing rapid orders as damage reports flooded in. "Commander," the young Guardian called out, "these Alliance representatives have critical information about the gate." Valen barely spared them a glance. "We're a little busy with Alliance diplomacy at the moment," he said bitterly. "Commander, the jump gate design is fundamentally flawed," Zora stated bluntly. "If activated, it will create a catastrophic explosion that will destroy everything in this sector." More Alliance lies, Valen dismissed. Elaine believes them, the young woman insisted. The energy fluctuations we've been experiencing, they match what the engineer is describing. This caught Valen's attention. He looked up sharply. Explain. As Zora quickly outlined the technical issues, another Guardian interrupted with an urgent report. Commander, Alliance forces have breached the outpost. They've recovered their personnel and are demanding our surrender. They're threatening to target the Helios venture directly. Valen's expression hardened. Initiate jump gate activation sequence. What? Mira exclaimed. Didn't you hear what we just told you? It will explode. Or it will create a stable transit point that will force the Alliance to acknowledge our autonomy. Valen countered. I've heard Alliance warnings about our technology before. They've always been exaggerated to undermine our independence. This isn't about politics, Zora insisted. It's basic physics. The resonance pattern is a theoretical concern, Valen cut her off. We've run simulations. Incomplete ones, the young Guardian interjected. Commander, I've been trying to tell you. Our models don't account for full power operation. Valen hesitated, conflict evident on his face. Years of distrust battling against the respected opinion of his own people. Mira seized the moment. Commander, I propose an alternative. Allow me to contact the Alliance forces. I'll negotiate a ceasefire and arrange for independent verification of the jump gate design. Experts that neither side can dismiss. While they surround us and prepare to seize everything we've built, Valen scoffed. While we prevent a catastrophe that would render the entire dispute meaningless, Mira countered. There will be nothing left to fight over if that gate activates in its current state. The ship rocked again, more violently this time. Warning indicators flashed across multiple displays. Direct hit to exterior stabilizers, someone reported. Structural integrity compromised in sections 12 through 17. We're out of time, Valen said grimly. Proceed with activation. No! Zora lunged for the nearest console, attempting to override the command. A Guardian moved to intercept her, but Mira stepped between them. Listen to me, she addressed the room at large. I am an official representative of the Galactic Alliance. I am offering formal recognition of Expanse sovereignty claims in exchange for a peaceful resolution to this conflict. The statement caused a momentary pause in the chaos. Valen stared at her in disbelief. You don't have the authority, he challenged. I have emergency diplomatic discretion under Article 47 of the Alliance Charter, Mira countered. Verified by quantum authentication. She held up her diplomatic credentials, which indeed contained such emergency protocols, though they had never been invoked in frontier regions before. And why should we trust Alliance promises? Valen demanded, though Mira could see uncertainty in his eyes now. Because dying for a flawed jump gate serves no one's interests. Not yours. Not the Alliance's. Not the people of the Expanse who you claim to protect. Mira replied steadily. Let me prove that diplomacy can succeed where confrontation has failed. Another impact rocked the ship, and emergency containment fields flickered into existence around damaged sections. Valen made his decision. Hold activation sequence, he ordered. Ambassador Kessler will have one chance to demonstrate Alliance good faith. Mira wasted no time. Using the Operations Center's communication system, she established contact with the Alliance vessels. This is Ambassador Mira Kessler, Alliance Diplomatic Service, she transmitted. I am requesting immediate cessation of hostilities under emergency diplomatic protocol. There was a tense pause before a response came through. Ambassador Kessler, this is Captain Reyes of the Alliance security vessel, Dauntless. We are engaged with hostile forces who have seized an Alliance resource carrier and taken Alliance personnel hostage. I am not a hostage, Captain, Mira replied firmly. I am engaged in diplomatic negotiations with the sovereign representatives of the Expanse regions. I invoke Article 47 authority and demand an immediate ceasefire. The mention of Article 47, rarely used but significant in Alliance protocol, created another pause. "Verification code required for Article 47 invocation," came the cautious response. Mira transmitted her unique diplomatic authentication sequence. Long seconds passed as it was verified. "Authentication confirmed," Captain Reyes finally acknowledged. "Ceasefire granted for standard diplomatic interval of 12 hours. Be advised that this authorization is provisional, pending central confirmation." "Acknowledged," Mira replied. "Prepare to receive a delegation for preliminary discussions. Kessler out." She turned to find Valen watching her with newfound respect. "Impressive, Ambassador. But 12 hours isn't much time to resolve generations of conflict." "It's enough to begin," Mira said. "And to verify the jump gate issues. I suggest we start with that, as a demonstration of mutual good faith." The next 10 hours were among the most intense of Mira's diplomatic career. With Zora's technical expertise, they confirmed that the jump gate design was indeed fatally flawed, a fact that even the most skeptical Guardian engineers eventually acknowledged when presented with the evidence. Simultaneously, Mira coordinated negotiations between Valen and Captain Reyes, establishing the framework for what would eventually become the Expanse Autonomy Agreement. The fundamental compromise was elegant in its simplicity. The Frontier Guardians would gain recognized authority over Expanse territories and the right to construct a jump gate with proper technical specifications, while the Alliance would receive guarantees of safe passage and preferential access to unique Expanse resources. As the 12-hour deadline approached, Mira found herself in a final planning session with Valen, Zora, and key representatives from both sides. "The revised jump gate design will take approximately 3 months to implement," Zora was explaining, displaying the new schematics. "But it will be stable and significantly more efficient than the original concept." "And the Alliance will provide technical assistance?" Valen confirmed, still somewhat disbelieving of this sudden reversal in relations. "Specialized personnel and equipment," Mira confirmed, "in exchange for the agreed-upon transit protocols." "I never imagined the Alliance would recognize our claims," Valen admitted. "After years of being dismissed as pirates and outlaws, the Alliance adapts when presented with realities it cannot ignore," Mira replied diplomatically. "Your determination made this inevitable, though perhaps not in the way you originally envisioned." A Guardian entered the meeting room with an urgent message. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission from Central. They're requesting to speak directly with Ambassador Kessler." Mira exchanged glances with Valen. This was the moment of truth. Central could potentially overrule her invocation of Article 47, unraveling everything they'd achieved. "Put it through here," Valen decided, indicating the room's communication system. The display activated to reveal the stern countenance of Alliance Council Representative Xavier, Mira's direct superior. His expression gave nothing away. "Ambassador Kessler," he greeted formally. "Your creative application of diplomatic protocols has caused quite a stir at Central. Desperate circumstances required innovative solutions." "Representative," Mira replied, maintaining her composure. "The preliminary agreement I've negotiated serves Alliance interests while acknowledging the realities of Expanse governance." "So I see from the documentation you've transmitted." Xavier studied her for a moment, then shifted his gaze to include Valen. "Commander Valen, I presume?" "Yes," Valen answered cautiously. "Your reputation precedes you," Xavier noted, "though perhaps not entirely accurately. It seems perceptions from a distance rarely capture the full complexity of frontier realities," Mira interjected smoothly. Xavier almost smiled, the closest he ever came to showing amusement. "Indeed, Ambassador. A lesson Central may need to relearn periodically." He paused, then continued with formal precision. "The Alliance Council has reviewed your preliminary agreement under emergency protocol. While certain provisions will require modification during formal ratification, the core principles are acceptable." Mira maintained her diplomatic composure, but internally she felt a surge of triumph. The Council's wisdom is appreciated. Representative, don't overdo it, Ambassador, Xavier cautioned dryly. You'll remain in the Expanse to oversee implementation of the agreement. Captain Reyes will provide security support as needed. Regular progress reports are expected. Understood, Representative. After the transmission ended, Valen turned to Mira with undisguised amazement. They actually agreed. The Alliance prefers stable relations to ongoing conflict, Mira explained, especially when the alternative might involve catastrophic jump gate failures and disrupted resource channels. So what happens now? Valen asked. Now, Mira said, we build something that works, for everyone. 3 months later, Mira stood in the observation lounge of the newly established Expanse Coordination Center, formerly the Frontier Station. The facility had undergone dramatic renovations, with outdated systems replaced and previously neglected sections restored to full functionality. Through the viewport, she could see the steady traffic of vessels, Alliance and Independent alike, moving through the regulated transit corridors that now connected the Expanse to broader galactic trade networks. The infamous "End of the Galaxy" graffiti remained on the main navigation display. But now, it was preserved as a historical marker, surrounded by accurate maps of the regions beyond. Quite a change from when you arrived, Jax commented, joining her at the viewport. After the crisis had been resolved, he had been promoted to head of Joint Security Operations, a role that involved coordinating between Alliance forces and the now legitimate Expanse Defense Corps. The Edge needed proper attention, not fear and neglect, Mira replied. It just took a near disaster to make everyone realize it. And one stubborn diplomat, Jax added with a smile. Central's sending a formal delegation next month to review the progress. Word is, they're considering a permanent diplomatic mission here. They'll need someone who understands frontier realities, Mira mused. The standard protocols don't always apply out here. Speaking of which, Jax said, the modified jump gate is scheduled for its first official test tomorrow. Zora and Valen have been working non-stop to ensure everything goes perfectly. I wouldn't miss it, Mira assured him. Later, she made her way to her office, considerably more comfortable than her original quarters had been. As she reviewed the latest reports, a message notification appeared on her display. It was from her contact at Central, marked with the highest priority. The message was brief, but significant. Project: Frontier integration approved by Council. Implementation authority granted to Ambassador Kessler. Effective immediately. Full resources allocated. Mira smiled to herself. What had begun as a desperate search for a missing ship had evolved into something far more significant. A new approach to frontier relations that recognized the unique challenges and opportunities of the Expanse. The aliens might still call it the end of the galaxy, but to humans, and increasingly to other species as well, it was simply space worth understanding, worth protecting, and worth integrating into the greater galactic community. Not an ending at all, but a new beginning. As Mira prepared her acknowledgement to Central, she reflected on the events that had brought her here. The plasma storm that had seemed like such a disaster had actually diverted them to exactly where they needed to be. Sometimes, she mused, being pushed off course was the only way to discover the right path. In the end, what the aliens called the end of the galaxy had never been an ending, just a frontier that required someone willing to bridge the gap between perception and reality. For Mira Kessler, that challenge had only just begun.